Well, hello everybody. How are we all doing today? Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us either in present form or online. Thank you all. I'm very excited to get our program started today, but before I go any further, if I could ask us all to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you very much. Could I ask those that have served our country in uniform to remain standing? The rest may be seated. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for our freedom. Those at home that are watching, thank you as well. Yeah, the Palm Springs Air Museum's, our mission, our goal, our reason for existence is to preserve, educate, and honor. Preserve the history, preserve the aircraft, educate people, of course, that I was born after the events of Vietnam, so World War II, Korea, and even Vietnam itself are history to me, not anything I lived through, much less my daughter who's 5 years old and born long after the events of 9/11. So the purpose of the museum is to keep those things alive and teach the lessons that we all need to learn from them. And then, of course, to honor those people that gave all they had and gave so much for our country, for our freedom, for our democracy. So I want to thank all of those that did so much so that I have lived the life that I have, my daughter has the life she has, and all of us enjoy the freedoms we enjoy. So thank you very much. Thank you for those that have served. So I just want to put that out there and show my appreciation. Now, other appreciation I'd like to share also, of course, Palm Springs Air Museum volunteers. Every week I see more volunteers joining us for these programs. And it's like a Thanksgiving dinner that more people keep coming to. And I've been with the museum now for 12 years. I've been the education coordinator now. 12 years, I can't believe it. But it becomes like a family. And to see more and more people coming back, getting vaccinated, doing the things they need to do to rejoin us. And I just want to thank them for what they do for this museum. And we say this is a living history museum, and our volunteers are what make that an actual fact. So thank you to our volunteers. We appreciate you all very much. And, of course, to our members, people that support the museum through their financial donations and participating in what it is that we do here. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see our members coming back, too. Once again, it's like Thanksgiving. It's family dinner and people gathering around and saying, hey, I know you. So thank you for being here with us. If you're here today and you're not a member of the museum, we would love to have you. Please do consider it. It supports our mission. It keeps us going. It brings in new aircraft. But it also just keeps us doing what it is that we need to do, which is educating current and future generations as to the sacrifices that have been made for our freedoms. Please do think about that. We'd love to have you. And now, let me tell you a little bit about our featured speaker today. Speaking of sacrifices made on the behalf of our country, my goodness, today's story is absolutely the epitome of that. We're here today with Francis Gary Powers Jr., whose father, we all know this, well, we don't know, but we've heard of before, and we're here to learn more about. Now, Gary's here with us today. He was born in 1965. He holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy and a master's degree in public administration and U.S. history. He's the founder and chairman emeritus of the Cold War Museum located in Vint Hill, Virginia. He is the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee for the Cold War Themed Study, which assists the National Park Service to identify historic Cold War sites for preservation. Gary is the past president and CEO of the Vienna Tysons Corner Regional Chamber of Commerce, 2000 to 2005. And in 2015, he consulted for Steven Spielberg's thriller, Bridge of Spies, which, I'm going to pause here momentarily to say, we are going to show at this museum. We've been trying to do it for a while now. COVID has prevented that, but that is going to happen. As long as you're committed to it, we're committed to it, we're going to make that happen. So he was a consultant for Steven Spielberg on that movie, Bridge of Spies, about the 1962 spy exchange between the KGB spy Rudolf Abel and CIA U-2 pilot Francis Gary Powers Sr. He is the author of Letters from the Soviet Prison and Spy Pilot, Gary lectures internationally, appears regularly on C-SPAN, History and Discovery channels, and is married with one son, and is here today as our featured speaker. Gary, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Palm Springs Air Museum.
Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Originally, I was supposed to be here March of last year. I was on a 3-week lecture circuit around California in March, and on March 17th, after everything started to come apart, I was on a red-eye plane back to Virginia. I missed LA being shut down by about 6 hours. So I was very glad to get out of Dodge at that time. At first, like many of you, it'll last a few weeks, a few months. Well, here we are a year later. But I'm picking up where I left off. So today I'll be talking about my book, Spy Pilot. It's 25 years of research, 5 years to write it. It takes Dad's reputation from infamy and controversy in the 1960s to that of an American hero today. It goes through what the family did behind the scenes to help make sure that Dad's reputation was intact, through FOIA requests, declassified files, unpublished written and or oral histories from some of his contemporaries that I was able to gather over these 25 years time period. It ends with how the US government eventually set the record straight. It took 40 and 50 years to do that, but eventually they honored him as a hero to our country in May of 2000 with the POW medal, and in June of 2012 with the Silver Star. So this book talks about how this transformation happened from infamy and controversy to that of an American hero today. To start and give some background on this talk, I'm going to show a quick video movie clip from the movie Bridge of Spies to set the stage for today's talk. I found out about this movie back in June of 2014. That Steven Spielberg, of all people, was going to do a movie that would portray my father. And my first thought was, he's not going to do this. Why would he do this? He has no reason to do this. But then in July of 2014, I get confirmation through the Hollywood Reporter and some other trade magazines that Spielberg is going to do this movie. And my first thought was, how do you get in touch with Steven Spielberg? You just can't pick up the phone. Very busy man, everybody wants a piece of him to pitch the next blockbuster movie. So I reached out to some friends in Hollywood. I could not get an introduction. I resorted to Google. I typed in his name, typed in his movie's names, up popped people he worked with. I typed in their names, and I found some of their email addresses. So I sent out an unsolicited email to some of his contemporaries in the beginning part of July of 2014. And I basically say the following. Hello, my name is Gary Powers Jr. I'd like to talk to Mr. Spielberg about this movie that will portray my father. It's very important that we express the Powers family's concerns. If he bases the portrayal of my father on the misinformation of the time, they'll be painting him in a negative light. If they base it off the declassified information that's come to surface the last 50 plus years, they'll be painting him as a hero to our country. So for obvious reasons, very important to reach out, try to establish contact. As a result of that email, I get a phone call from Mark Platt. Mark Platt's the producer on the film. He's better known for his production of Wicked on Broadway. So he's very well respected, very well regarded in the industry. Mark and I talked for about an hour. I want to say July 14th of 2014. I'm traveling across the country at the time. I am on the phone with him for about an hour, talking about my experience, what my research shows, and at the end of the conversation, he goes, "Hey, Mr. Powers, thank you very, very much for reaching out to us. How would you like to be a technical consultant on the film?" Well, sure, that would be an honor. Thank you very much. I get the contract, I'm reading through it. Basically, I'm to answer questions. I'm to provide photographs of my family from the 50s that they can Photoshop, put their actors' heads on. I'm to provide audio tapes of my father speaking that he had recorded when he was doing his book back in 1970. That way they could listen to him firsthand about his experiences and what he had gone through. At the very end of this contract, last paragraph, it basically says, they don't have to listen to me. Very last sentence. If I don't like the end result, I can't sue. Ooh. Tie the family's hands, use the family's name, and then do whatever they want to do. So I thought long and hard about what I should do. Should I be a part of this or not? And at the end of the day, I did sign on the dotted line. I thought it was very important to try to be a part of this production, steer them in the right direction. Otherwise, had I walked away, I would have had no say whatsoever. So I signed on the dotted line, and I'm very glad that I did. We like the movie. The big picture is historically accurate. It accurately portrays the time period of the Cold War, 1945 to 1991, the tensions between the Soviets and the Americans, the fear of a nuclear war between our two countries, the duck and cover drills that took place that many of you probably participated in as young kids. And so the big picture is historically accurate. But it is Hollywood. So there's some embellishment, dramatic effect, artistic liberties. So while the big picture is accurate, the details of each scene are not 100% correct. So I'm going to show a quick, Greg, how do I get this slide down? I'm going to show a quick 2.5-minute movie, a video clip of the movie Bridge of Spies to start or set the stage for today's talk. Thank you. From there we can do it.
You've been selected for a mission which you are not to discuss with anyone outside of this room. We are engaged in a war with the Soviet Union. This war does not for the moment involve men at arms. It involves information.
Something important has come up. We've got a Soviet spy. But there's a wrinkle. They got our spy pilot. Or the head full of classified information. The Russians want their man back before he cracks. We want you to negotiate the swap.
I'm an insurance lawyer. I'm not sure I want to pick that up.
Are you good at what you do?
This will be a first for the both of us.
You should be careful.
I'm talking to you about the security of your country.
Why aren't we hanging him? He's a spy! You're asking me to violate the Constitution.
Do you know how people will look at us? The family of a man trying to free a traitor?
Everyone deserves a defense. Every person matters. Where do they want this negotiation?
East Berlin.
Just tell me that you're not going to be in any danger. I don't even care if it's the truth. Give me something to hold on to.
We need to have the conversation our governments can't.
People in my country consider this an act of war.
You can call it what you want.
Let's be clear.
Nobody is safe.
We're in a battle for civilization.
The Constitution is what makes us Americans. Shouldn't we show our enemy who we are?
Things are starting to fall apart. Is this your position or your government's?
Is there any outcome here where I'm not either detained or shot?
Do we need to worry about you?
No.
What's the move when we don't know what the game is?
The next mistake our countries make could be the last one.
So the movie is based off of 2 books and the historical record. The first one is Strangers on a Bridge by James Donovan. Tom Hanks portrayed James Donovan in this film. James Donovan was an attorney He actually was part of the OSS back in the day in World War II. No relations to Wild Bill Donovan, who was the founder of the OSS, but they did share the common last name. After the OSS, he ended up being an attorney, and he was selected because of his contacts within the government and his experience with the OSS to be the attorney to represent the Soviet spy Rudolf Abel. He also then was tasked to the exchange, to broker the exchange behind the scenes between the Soviet spy and my father. The movie is also based off of my dad's autobiography called Operation Overflight that he wrote in 1970. He wrote this with the information that he had available at the time. My book takes it one step further with a lot more declassified files and up-to-date information. So Dad wrote this in 1970. It was his account of what took place with the U-2 program, his involvement, the shoot-down, imprisonment, and the subsequent exchange. So between these two books and the historical record, some of the fake news, you have the movie Bridge of Spies. When I was growing up in Southern California, I was aware that my father had been shot down over the Soviet Union, imprisoned by the KGB, and ultimately exchanged for a Soviet spy. But as a kid, growing up in this family, this was normal. I was aware of it. I thought everybody's dad had been through something like this. That perception changed on August 1st of '77. My dad's working for NBC Television out of Los Angeles, flying their helicopter, reporting on news, weather, and traffic. On August 1st of '77, the helicopter runs out of gas and crashes. He and the cameraman are killed in the accident. So at the time, being 12 years old, I walk into a house full of people who inform my mom and I of the bad news. Our lives are turned upside down. I become very introverted. I don't understand why the press will call the house to ask questions, why friends at school will come up to me and tell me something they know about my father. So I'm a little confused as to why people are knowing about my father and want to ask me questions. In addition, I really don't know what the answers are. So I don't know what I should answer or how I should answer because I don't know what the truth is. In college, I come out of my shell. I am curious. I want to find out more about my father, the U-2 incident, the controversy that surrounds him. So I start to do this research. And when I start the research, I don't start it to vindicate my father. I don't start it to honor him. All I'm trying to do is to find out the truth so I know how to answer questions. And it snowballs. I start talking to my mom, my sister, family members, aunts and uncles, trying to find out as much as I could about my dad. The more I learned from family, the more questions there are. So I realized I had to first understand more about the U-2 program, the U-2 incident, to learn more about my father. That's where my research led. Started talking to CIA officials, Air Force officials, people who flew with my father during this time period, trying to find out as much as I could on the U-2 incident, the U-2 program, the controversy surrounding my dad. Well, the more I learn, the more questions there are, and I realize I have to understand the Cold War to understand the U-2 incident to learn more about my father. And that's where my research leads. I start talking to World War II veterans, trying to find out as much as I could on the end of World War II, the Potsdam Agreement, the Marshall Plan, the Berlin Airlift, the origins of the Cold War, up through the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. As a result of my research, specifically into the U-2 incident, I uncovered numerous conspiracy theories, rumors, speculation, some outright lies about what took place on May 1st of '60. I've read that it was sabotage, and a Norwegian spy had planted a bomb in the tail section of the airplane. I've read that it was our own government, CIA, who intentionally sabotaged the mission to perpetuate the Cold War by ruining the summit conference that was planned for May 16th of that year. I've read that it was pilot error, that Dad allowed the plane to have a flameout that forced it to a lower altitude where it was then hit by a MiG or a missile. And my favorite theory comes from a television show called Dark Skies for NBC Television. This is probably 25 or 30 years ago. They attribute the U-2 incident to an encounter with a UFO. So we've all these alleged theories. Some that are quite believable flame-out theory, others that are a little far-fetched, being encountered with a UFO. So from what I have researched, from what my research indicates, Dad was born 1929, Southwest Virginia, during the middle or beginning of the Depression. So he's raised during the Depression. He told me a story one time that he would lay awake at night and occasionally he would hear his parents talking. Not where the next dollar was coming from, but where the next nickel was coming from. The height of the Depression. They are living in Southwest Virginia in some of the hollers. His dad is a coal miner, also a shoe cobbler, repairs many of the miners' shoes as a business. So this is how my father's being raised on the family farm in Southwest Virginia. He is the first of his family to go to college. He goes to Milligan College in Tennessee between 1946 and 1950. He graduates and immediately enlists in the U.S. Air Force. He wants to be a pilot. He had a plane ride at a country fair sometime in about 1941, and he told his sister that he left his heart up there. He has been pursuing this passion, this desire to be a pilot, so he's enlisted in the U.S. Air Force in 1950. He gets his wings in 1952. He is flying F-84s out of Turner Airfield, Turner Air Force Base near Albany, Georgia. He's flying the F-84s between 1952 and 1956. In 1956, the really early part of it, January, February, he is recruited by the CIA to come into the U-2 program to fly this new top secret airplane over the Soviet Union and other foreign hostile countries, taking photographs of the military bases and complexes on the ground below. He is recruited in early '56. He's trained to fly the U-2 at Area 51 in the Nevada desert. He is then shipped over to Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey, and he starts to do these missions over the Soviet Union and other countries between the middle of '56 and May 1st of '60. During that 4-year time period, Dad flies 27 successful missions. A couple over the Soviet Union, and others over China, India, Pakistan, Middle Eastern countries, Eastern European countries. So after 4 years, he is one of the pilots with the most number of hours, the most experience flying the airplane. He is selected to fly the May 1st mission. The May 1st mission is a little different than the others in that this mission will fly from Peshawar, Pakistan, 2,900 miles across the entire width of the Soviet Union to Bodø, Norway. It should take about 9 hours to fly. So he gets up very early on May 1st of 1960. He goes through his briefing, what targets to overfly. He gets into his suit, hermetically sealed. He's breathing pure oxygen for about an hour and a half before the flight takeoff. The pilots would need to breathe oxygen, pure oxygen, to help get the nitrogen bubbles out of your bloodstream. Similar to the bends, if something happens at altitude, you're going up or down too quickly, you could get something similar to the bends unless you pre-breathe oxygen prior to the flight. So Dad does this. He takes off at 6:30 in the morning. He crosses over the Soviet Union's border at approximately 68,000 feet. He starts to flip on and off the camera switches that will take the photographic imagery of the ground below. As the fuel burns off, he's now flying at an altitude of 70,500 feet. He's 4.5 hours into his mission. He's over the city of Sverdlovsk. There, a bright orange flash lights up the exterior of the canopy. A shockwave hits the plane, pushes the plane forward, throws my dad back in his seat. My dad realizes that something's gone wrong. The controls no longer respond. You can't fly a plane without its tail section. The near miss of a Soviet SA-2 missile, a new and improved missile that had been developed over the last 4 years, has exploded near enough to the tail section to cause structural failure. As a result, the nose pitches forward, the wings snap off, Dad goes into an inverted spin, basically hanging upside down, held in by his harness. His first instinct is to hit the destruct button and then to hit the ejection seat so he can eject out of the canopy, out of the cockpit. But Dad cannot get his legs in the right position. The centrifugal force, the spinning of the aircraft. He can't get his legs back underneath him in the proper position to clear the airframe. If he ejects, he will sever his legs on the way out. Realizing this, he does the following. He opens up the canopy, which floats off into space, undoes his harness, and is immediately sucked up halfway out of the cockpit. He is still connected by his air hose. Half in the cockpit, half out of the cockpit, being banged around, his face plates frosted over. He can no longer see past his nose, can no longer reach the destruct button on the dashboard of the cockpit of the airplane. He realizes he's getting closer and closer to the ground. He breaks free of the air hose, falls free of the airplane. His parachute opens automatically at 15,000 feet. He parachutes down to the ground. On the way down, he notices a dark car following his descent. He lands on the outskirts of a collective farm. The farmers are working the fields. It's a holiday in the Soviet Union, May 1st. The kids are working the fields with their parents. They hear this commotion. They see the explosion in the air. This particular farm area, the parachute's getting closer too. They're watching it come down. They rush up to him. They help him with his backpack, his helmet, his parachute. They start to ask him questions in Russian. They think he's one of theirs. Well, Dad doesn't speak Russian. He shrugs his shoulders. Makes one of the farmers a little nervous. Who is this guy? Falls out of the sky, doesn't speak our language. A few moments later, the black car shows up. 2 men get out, put him in the back seat. They take him to the local officials in town. There, somebody speaks broken English. Who are you? What are you doing here? Where'd you come from? To which my dad would respond, my name is Gary Powers. I am lost. I have a mechanical malfunction. Can you take me to the American Embassy? No, that's not permitted. Can you take me to the American Red Cross? No, that's not permitted. And that's how it was the first few hours of his capture. Later that afternoon, early evening, the KGB show up, take him by armed guard to Moscow's airport, and then shuttle him over by car to Lubyanka prison. Lubyanka, the infamous KGB prison, part of and adjacent to the KGB headquarters downtown Moscow, and this is where he finds himself, his first night of captivity on May 1st of '60. For the next 5 days, the Soviets say nothing about the shootdown. At home in Washington, D.C., President Eisenhower, head of the CIA, Allen Dulles, State Department officials and Air Force officials are meeting, they're talking, they're trying to figure out where's the plane, where's the pilot, why didn't he land in Bodø, Norway? But so far, there's no information coming out of the Soviet Union that is giving hints as to what happened. On May 5th, Khrushchev, premier of the Soviet Union, holds a press conference. Ah, comrades, we've shot down an American spy plane. But Khrushchev intentionally makes no reference as to the pilot's fate. Because of that, the Eisenhower administration, thinking the pilot had died in the crash, or certainly Khrushchev would have paraded him around as evidence, they authorized the release of a cover story that an unarmed weather research plane may have accidentally strayed across the border after the pilot had radio trouble with his oxygen equipment. Once the cover story is in place, 2 days go by. Khrushchev comes back up to center stage on May 7th, very gleefully announces to the world at another press conference, ah, comrades, not only did we shoot down the plane, but we also have captured the pilot, Francis Gary Powers, who's quite alive and kicking and was confessed to spying for the CIA. Now I need to take you back 60 years. In 1960, very few people had heard of the CIA. Top secret government agency, created in '47 as part of the National Security Act to safeguard Americans at home by gathering intelligence information from abroad. So it was a very big embarrassment for Eisenhower, World War II general, World War II hero, very well-respected president. He had to admit that he had been caught lying to the American public. It was sensational news in 1960 for a president to get caught lying. Today, unfortunately, it's something we take for granted. So, the first time an American president gets caught lying, front page news, Dad's been shot down, summit conference in jeopardy, Eisenhower embellishing, show trial to take place in Moscow. These are the type of headlines that are being printed at the time. So the first 7 days between May 1st and May 7th, while Dad is going through the interrogations, he is lying to his captors outright, holding back as much information as possible, misleading them any way he can. But after 7 days, international press around the world, the KGB guard in charge of the interrogations, a copy of the New York Times in his hands, rushes into the cell room, the interrogation chamber, shoves the newspaper in Dad's face, yells at him, "You've lied to us. You told us you were trained in Arizona. Well, the New York Times says you were trained in Nevada at Area 51. You might as well tell us everything. Well, get it out of your American press anyways." So, Dad is stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he tells the full truth, he's given away secrets. If he lies to them and gets caught, he can get shot, face the death penalty for espionage. So he resorts to the following during his 3 months of solitary confinement and interrogations. He tells the full truth when he knows they can verify the information in the press. That gives him credibility. He lies to them when he knows there's no way they can find out the answer. Names of pilots, number of missions, specifications about the equipment on board. Then he gives a part truth, a part lie, dances around the question when he knows that they know something about the question they're asking, but not enough to contradict his answer. So he does this for about 3 months up until the show trial that is set or takes place on August 17th of 1960. It's a 3-day trial, 3 judges, international audience of reporters and VIPs. My dad's on the docket stand. During his trial, he is appointed a court-appointed defense counsel. Not once during the trial does he object to any question asked of my father. You also have to remember that in the Soviet Union, you are guilty until proven innocent, unlike in America where we are innocent until proven guilty. It's a little bit of a disparity there, and this is what my father was facing. I believe that the defense counsel, the prosecution, the judges were all in together, and that the end result would be 10 years imprisonment, that it would not be the death sentence. And the reason I think that is that Dad was too high profile a prisoner. The world knew that the Soviets had captured him. They wanted to show the world how humane they were, how nice they were, how they treated the spies that they captured in their country to further embarrass the United States. The U.S. had executed the Rosenbergs back in the early 50s. They had given Rudolf Abel, the Soviet spy captured in New York City in the late 50s, a 30-year prison sentence. So when the Soviets give my dad 10 years, they're trying to show the world propaganda that they are a really good country. So Dad is sentenced to 10 years in prison. He starts to serve that sentence in Vladimir prison. Vladimir is 3 hours outside of Moscow. At that facility, he has a cellmate, Zurgard Krimish. Zurgard is a Latvian. He explains to my father that he was caught smuggling goods and people in and out of Latvia while working for the British. For the most part, they help each other endure the hardship. Zurgard is a brilliant guy. He speaks 5 or 6 languages fluently. He is a grand master at chess. He teaches my dad to play chess in the Russian prison cell, something to pass the time. So my dad's a fairly smart guy. He picks up the game fairly easily. He knows the pieces, he knows how they move, he knows a little basic strategy. He can play a game. So once he can do that, Zurgard sets up the chess table, blindfolds himself, turns around, and still beats my dad at chess. Brilliant guy. My dad's now thinking, ooh, this guy is so smart, he remembers everything I say. He is a plant. And so this is what my father felt. But despite that feeling in the back of his head, Zurgard and him got along, they helped each other endure the hardship, and they remained friends after their release. The the exchange took place between my father and Rudolph Abel on February 10th of 1962. Oftentimes, people are not aware as to how this all came about. At first, James Donovan, who represented the Soviet spy, was able to prevent him from getting the death penalty, specifically because he said, hey, if we execute him and one of our guys gets caught, then we'll have no bargaining chip. If we keep him in prison and one of our guys gets caught, we may be able to do an exchange. So James Donovan had the foresight to say that and actually be able to implement that into his defense. But my grandfather, Oliver Powers, my dad's dad, actually also gets some credit. And I want to read a letter that he wrote to Rudolph Abel on June 2nd of 1960, basically 30 days after the shoot-down. So my grandfather from Pound, Virginia, is writing this letter saying, Dear Colonel Abel, I am the father of Francis Gary Powers, who was connected with the U-2 plane incident of several weeks ago. I am quite sure that you are familiar with this international incident and also the fact that my son is being currently held by the Soviet Union on an espionage charge. You can readily understand the concern that a father would have for his son and for a strong desire to have my son released and brought home. My present feeling is that I would be more than happy to approach the State Department and the President of the United States for an exchange for the release of my son. By this I mean that I would urge and do everything possible to have my government release you and return you to your country, if the powers in your country would release my son and let him return to me. If you are inclined to go along with this arrangement, I'd appreciate you so advising me and also so advising the powers in your country along these lines. I'd appreciate hearing from you in this regard as soon as possible. Very truly yours, Oliver Powers. So, Rudolph Abel gets this letter, and he writes the following response on June 12th. Rudolph Abel, prison number 816, June 12, 1960. Mr. Oliver Powers, much as I appreciate and understand your concern for the safety of your and return of your son, I regret to say that all things considered, I am not the person to whom your request should have been directed. Obviously, this should be my wife, aka KGB. Unfortunately, by order of the Department of Justice, U.S., I am not permitted to write to my family and so cannot convey your request to them directly. Sincerely yours, R.I. Abel. So the FBI reads every letter that goes into Abel and out of Abel's jail cell. They realize that my grandfather is meddling in their affairs. He's written not only to Khrushchev, but now also to this Russian spy and received a reply. They tell their buddies over at the CIA what's going on. Two guys in suits show up to the Norton City shoe shop in Southwest Virginia where my grandfather's working on shoes. They come on in, they talk to him. Mr. Powers, please don't meddle in our affairs. You can make it a lot worse for your son. We will take it from here. And sure enough, they do. They contract with James Donovan. James Donovan negotiates with the East Germans and the Russians behind the scenes to do this prisoner exchange of Rudolph Abel for my father. And in addition, an added bonus, he was able to negotiate the release of Frederick Pryor, a student who was captured in East Berlin trying to smuggle out a Fraulein that he was trying to save her and her family. So he's been thrown into an East German prison. So James Donovan is able to negotiate this exchange. The exchange takes place February 10th of 62, the Glienicke Bridge, Potsdam, Germany. It is a cold, dark, foggy morning, right out of a John Le Carré novel. Two spies are on each side of the Glienicke Bridge. They are positively ID'd. They walk home to their respective freedoms. Abel returns home a hero of the Soviet Union. A parade in his honor, postage stamp in his likeness, some medals for his heroics. Dad returns home to controversy. While he's in prison, the editorials in the newspaper had been written saying basically that he had defected, he landed the plane intact, He spilled his guts and told the Soviets everything he knew, or he had not followed orders and committed suicide, all of which were part truths, mistruths, some innuendos, and or outright lies of the time. Now, before I go on to explain what happened upon my dad's return, I'm going to show one more quick video clip from the movie Bridge of Spies. This is the exchange scene. So you're going to see how Spielberg set up this exchange scene from behind the scenes. You'll see him talking to the actors, positioning them in certain places. You'll see some of the crew spraying fake snow on the Glennecker Bridge. The bridge that was used in the exchange scene is the actual bridge where the spy exchange took place. So that bridge is historically accurate for the movie. And then you'll see a little bit about how this scene came to life.
For me, it was super powerful to be standing on the bridge, the Glennecker Bridge. It says the Bridge of Spies as you walk up onto that bridge. And it was freezing cold.
Cold. The bridge was freezing. It was. But we were all in it together. And that was our last bit in Berlin. And what a way to go out.
I wouldn't do the dialogue on the walk. We'll do the long dialogue on a side dialogue.
We all reacted to it. I don't think there was a single actor there or member of the crew that weren't taking into account the fact that this is where incredible history happened. And it had global, international repercussions. And to be there recreating it raises the stakes of what we're doing.
We're going to push it on a nice medium shot of Abel's reaction to seeing Donovan. And then we're going to dolly back with Abel and then turn into this configuration.
Have you arranged all this for me?
Well, let's see what this is before I take credit for it.
So my dad returns home to a lot of controversy. He is debriefed by the CIA for 3 weeks at a safe house in Maryland. After the first week of debriefings, they realized that he didn't give away any information to the Soviets, that he didn't compromise or jeopardize any of their programs that he had knowledge of. So the CIA was able to re-implement and get these programs back in effect. They also realized that he was shot down at his assigned altitude of 70,500 feet, that there was no flameout or descent prior to being shot down. After he is debriefed, he is put before a Senate Select Committee hearing. Basically, the senators want to find out what happened. So they have him come in. He testifies before the Senate for about 8 hours, questions back and forth. 3 or 4 of the senators included Prescott Bush, President Bush's grandfather or father, Barry Goldwater out of Arizona, Senator Russell, which the House office building was named after in downtown DC now, and even Al Gore Sr. So those are the type of people that were on this committee. After 8 hours of deliberations, they exonerate my dad of any wrongdoing. They show him to be a fine young man, performing well under dangerous circumstances. Basically, pat on your back, good job for your country. However, even though he was exonerated by the US Senate, cleared by the CIA, he was not yet cleared by the court of public opinion. All the misinformation, the fake news of the time in the newspapers is still circulating around. And thanks to the internet today, it's still there. And we all know that everything online is true. Therefore, people still believe the misinformation, conspiracy theories, and the fake news. So that's one of the reasons I decided to write these books, is to help set the record straight, to talk about the truth of what took place, to squelch the misinformation, the fake news of the time that still circulates. When Dad gets home, his objective is to go back into the Air Force. His contract with the CIA says, upon completion, pilots can go back into the military at a rank comparable to their peers with no loss of duty time. That their time with the CIA will count towards retirement. So Dad's expecting to go back in, serve 8 more years, 20 years total, retire. Well, the Air Force is a little squeamish. He's the spy. I think the battery's going in and out. He's the known spy. So the Air Force. Do we have another set, or I can use the mic? Hello? So the Air Force is a little squeamish. He is the known spy. And it's my opinion that they're thinking, if we employ him, we will be accused of employing spies. Well, the Air Force doesn't want that. In addition, the CIA has no use for him. I mean, his cover is blown. They cannot send him back out into the U-2 program to fly over other foreign hostile countries. So Kelly Johnson, the designer of the airplane, comes to the rescue. He offers Dad a job as a Lockheed test pilot as long as he can pass the mental and physical examinations. Dad passes with flying colors. No ill effects from his incarceration. So he's a Lockheed test pilot between 63 and 70. In 1970, he writes his book, Operation Overflight, that details his account of what he went through. The same month that the book is put before the CIA Review Board to be cleared, he's let go from Lockheed. Coincidence? My father didn't think so. He thought he ruffled somebody's feathers in the government contractor beholden to the government for contracts was obligated or asked to let him go. Now, there's no official proof I've ever found to confirm that, but I did find through FOIA requests through CIA and Air Force that as a result of his termination from Lockheed, Dad and his attorney write some letters to the Air Force and CIA. They agreed to a financial compensation package in lieu of an Air Force retirement. I'd like to read the letter that he wrote, not only, let me get a little ahead of myself, hold on one second. And so a deal was negotiated. Dad signed on the dotted line, non-disclosure agreement. He has a financial compensation package, a little stability towards retirement. He's on the lecture circuit between 70 and 72. Then he is hired by KGIL radio station in 1972 to fly over the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, reporting on news, weather, and traffic for the rush hour commutes. 1976, he gets a job with NBC Television, flying their helicopter. And on August 1st, 1977, after about a year and a half of flying for NBC, helicopter runs out of gas, crashes. He and the cameraman are killed in the accident. So that's a quick overview of the U-2 incident, my father's involvement, what he had gone through. Prior to his death in 77, my father had heard of some things through the church committee hearings in 1970s. They were investigating the assassination of President Kennedy. They were investigating some abuse of power by the CIA around the world. So the church committee was holding these hearings, and Dad's name was referenced. So he ends up writing a letter to Senator Church, and I would like to read that to you. September 17, 1975, Dear Senator Church, I have followed the CIA hearings with great deal of interest and would like to congratulate you and your committee for the much needed job you are doing. The reasons for this letter are twofold. First, CIA Director William Colby stated I was the first person to be issued shellfish toxin for my flight on May 1st of 60. This may be true because I know very little about poisons, but it conflicts with what I remember being told by the CIA at the time, and also conflicts with what the Russian experts who examined the poisons testified during my trial. They concluded that the poison was of curare. Second, I have hesitated to bring up the second point, being afraid it would be considered, quote, sour grapes. But since my name was brought into the investigation by Mr. Colby on September 16th of 75, I have decided to write this letter. There is, in my opinion, another matter which should be investigated by your committee. It does not concern assassinations or anything as dramatic as that, but it does concern the misuse of the vast power of the CIA against American citizens with whom the CIA has a grudge, either real or imagined. I am a living example of that misuse of power. Because of the CIA, I was discharged from my engineering test pilot position at Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in 70. The discharge came the same month I allowed the CIA to see a manuscript of my book I wrote. Lockheed later hired other pilots to do the same job I was doing, several of them with no experience in the U-2 aircraft. No attempt was made to recall me to the job. I was told by a friend after I had applied for a position at another aerospace company that instructions had been received to give me the grand tour, basically wine and dine, but not to be hired. Later, NASA, was looking for U-2 pilots. I was not considered for the job even though I was better qualified than most, if not all, of the other pilots who were employed. As a result of either direct or indirect CIA action, I was unemployed for almost 3 years and feel myself very lucky to be employed now, even though my present employment does not compensate as well as earlier positions. I feel I have been made an example of for other people whom the CIA wants to keep in check. I am not the only one who knows I did a good job for my country. I have paid my dues, including almost 2 years in a Russian prison. I see no reason I should have been punished by the CIA, apparently because the U-2 incident happened to be an embarrassment to some people. I only did what the CIA told me to do, and I did it well. In retrospect, my 2 years in a Russian prison was easy when compared to my treatment by the CIA. I had broken Russian laws and was punished because I was guilty. But I broke no US or CIA laws, and I find it hard to understand why I have been treated in the above manner. Thank you for your attention to this letter. Should you think there is any merit in the above, I am willing to aid you in any way I can. Sincerely, Francis Gary Powers. So this whole controversy that surrounded my father and his untimely death in 1977 is what put me on this track to try to find out the truth of what took place. And that's why I ended up writing Spy Pilot, to help set the record straight. Along my journey to find out about my father, to find out the truth of what took place, I discovered that there were hundreds of thousands of men and women who fought, sacrificed, and died during this conflict that had not been given any recognition for their service during the Cold War. I also found out by giving lectures to high school students between 92 and 96 that they really didn't know anything about the Cold War that had just ended 5 years earlier. I would go into a classroom in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. I would give a talk on the U-2 incident. I get blank stares from the kids. They thought I was there to talk about the U-2 rock band. So that was the first clue. Something had to be done to preserve Cold War history, honor Cold War veterans, educate kids on this time period. In 1996, I ended up founding the Cold War Museum, honor Cold War veterans, preserve Cold War history, educate kids. What I thought would take 3 years, fundraise $3 million, shouldn't be too hard, took 15 years to get brick and mortar. And in that time period, we started to collect Cold War artifacts. Very easy to find in the mid-90s, very difficult to find today. So we were ahead of the curve when we started our outreach and our collection. As a result of our efforts, we have items from the USS Liberty incident, the USS Pueblo incident, overhead reconnaissance platforms, U-2, SR-71, KH and/or Corona spy satellites. We have the largest collection of civil defense items in America, having saved and salvaged the Civil Defense Headquarters for Washington, D.C. We've been able to get uniforms, flags, banners, regalia, some weapons from East Germany, West Germany, the Soviet Union, America, and other countries that were involved in the Cold War. The Cold War was a world war. It affected every country to one extent or another. Some countries much more so, like Germany, that had the Berlin Wall going down the middle of the city. And it had a lasting impact on American life and world life. So I always think that it's very important to understand history, to learn from our past so that we can make our future a better place to live. Sometimes I'm thinking that government officials don't get that memo. So sometimes I see right now that history is repeating itself. The tensions, the things that are going on in the world. And you can look back to the Cold War and see similarities. And that's why I think it's so important to understand this history, because it will help you go forward into the future. So that's just a little bit about the Cold War Museum, the U-2 incident. More information online for the museum, that line is coldwar.org. If you'd like to reach me, I can be reached through my website at garypowers.com. So thank you very much for coming out today. I'll be glad to open this up for Q&A. And Greg, how do we want to do that?
Oh, do we have any questions? Well, first of all, how about a thank you, folks? Absolutely. And do we have any questions today? Anybody with a? I see one over here. Now, on my way over, Gary, Would you share with us your connection to the Air Museum? I know we have a friend in common.
My connection to the Air Museum, the Palm Springs Air Museum, I'm thinking.
Yes.
Well, our mutual friend is Robert Gilliland, and I think he may or may not be here today. Did he make it? He did make it. Okay. So he's in the audience. We have been friends as kids. Both of our dads were test pilots for Lockheed in the 60s. Bob Gilliland was the chief test pilot for the SR-71. Dad was a test pilot for Lockheed during that time period. And so we grew up together, getting in trouble as kids way back when.
Hey, Gary, thank you for your time today. Have you had any interaction with Russians that interacted with your dad during the, and did you visit Vladimir?
Thank you for the question. It's in regards to my interactions with the Soviet Union, Russia, and or visits to Dad's prison facilities. I have been very fortunate to have been over to the Soviet Union once in 1990. I was there in May 1st of 90, the 30th anniversary of the shoot-down. Excuse me. I was invited by a Soviet news agency in commemoration of the U-2 incident. I thought I was going to be able to see the U-2 wreckage. I thought I was going to be able to go to the May Day parade. I thought I was going to be able to talk to some people who either interacted with or were part of the U-2 incident on their side. That did not happen. They wined me, they dined me, they took me around to the countryside, the dachas on May 1st. They did not want me to see the May Day parade, and I found out afterwards it was because of glasnost and perestroika. They did not want me to see the demonstrations that were taking place on May 1st. They whisked me out to the countryside. They didn't want me to see the U-2 plane wreckage that's on display in the museum in Moscow. And the only reason I can think of is that they didn't know how I would react. They didn't want to have another incident at their hands. They didn't want to have any embarrassment. So I was not able to see really anything my first trip in May of 90. Fast forward to 1997, June. I'm on a spy tour of Moscow that was organized by former retired Northwest Mounted Police, CIA, FBI, and KGB agents. We have a friend in the audience that was on that tour with me. She is an author of spy novels. Marcia is a dear friend. She lives here in the area, has a couple more books out, would probably make a good speaker sometime in the future. So she was on the trip with her first husband, Tom, who was a career FBI agent, used to work under Hoover directly, and was responsible for finding spies in America. So on that tour in June of '97, that's when I'm able to see the U-2 wreckage for the first time. And it's in the Central Armed Forces Museum in downtown Moscow. So I go up and I touch it, do an interview in front of it, and it's like, wow, I've actually been able to see the U-2 wreckage. It's the same museum, the same location where it was in 1990. In 1990, nobody knew where it was. In 1997, because we were on a tour and they were making money, we were shown drop points and safe houses and other clandestine locations in Moscow. We drove by the KGB headquarters. We had a briefing by 2 retired KGB agents. At the dinner table one night, some CIA guys were talking to the KGB guys about how they were trying to do cat and mouse in Washington, D.C., going around corners trying to tail each other or lose each other, just like old buddies over a beer. So it was very interesting to be on that tour in '97. Then in 2010, the 50th anniversary of the U-2 incident, I'm invited over to the Central Armed Forces Museum. At that location where the U-2 wreckage is, I gave a lecture on the U-2 incident, the 50th anniversary. And then the last time I was there was December of 2017. So I was doing some consulting in Moscow. I do a side trip to Yekaterinburg, which was Sverdlovsk, where the U-2 incident happened. I was able to see the impact craters from where the plane hit the ground. I was able to see where my father landed by parachute in a Russian field, which is now a housing development. I was able to talk to people who were alive at that time, who remember the incident. And most importantly, I was able to lay flowers at a memorial to a MiG pilot, Sergei Safronov. Sergei Safronov was one of the MiG pilots that was scrambled on May 1st to shoot down my father. Well, friendly fire shot down his MiG. So of the 8 SA-2 missiles fired at my father, 1 exploded behind my dad's tail section. The other hit Sergei's plane, and he was killed in that shoot-down. The other 6, we're not sure what happened. They probably landed in the cornfields. And the reason I thought it was so important to pay my respect is that Sergei's son, Sergei Jr., had contacted me about 5 years earlier. And through an interpreter at the Cold War Museum, we talked about my father, his father, the Cold War, and what happened. So what he relayed to me is that his mother did not blame me for her husband's death. That my father was following orders, her husband was following orders, and that it was not my dad's fault that her husband died by friendly fire. So I was very, very pleased to know that there's no animosity between our 2 families. So as a way to show respect, on my trip in December of 2017, I told my host, I said, hey, where's the flower shop? I want to get some roses, pay my respects. So they take me to a flower shop, I pick up some roses, we're in a van, there's tons of press around. I'm about to get out to go up and walk up to this pedestal with the image of Sergei on the carved in marble or carved in granite with the tail section from the MiG that was shot down. So I'm about to get out, and my host turns to me and goes, hey, Mr. Powers, don't smile. What do you mean, don't smile? My mom taught me you smile for the camera. There's hundreds of press here. No. If you smile while you're doing this presentation, it will be an insult to the Russian people. Oh, thank you very much, stone face. So, I'm about to walk up to the pedestal. He goes, oh, Mr. Powers, one more thing. Don't turn your back on the memorial. What do you mean, don't turn your back? How am I supposed to walk away? Well, you walk up, you pay your respects, you give some time to contemplate, you stand up, you walk backwards a few steps, and then you turn around. Oh, thank you so much. I did not want to have another international incident on my hands. And so I was able to present these flowers, and it was the highlight of the trip, and I just basically wanted to show my respects to the family and to the Russian people. So those are the 4 times that I've been. The last part of your question is about the prison. On my 3rd trip during the spy tour in '97, I was able to get access to my father's prison cell at Vladimir Prison. One of my good friends is part of Task Force Russia, which has now been changed, and the name is something about POW, MIA, DPMO, something to that effect. And he is always going around the world, Korea, Vietnam, Soviet Union, Afghanistan, or Middle East, to try to find pilots or crew members that are MIA. And he's able to have been very successful in finding some remains from various wars that have been repatriated to the United States. So he's been doing this for so many years. He's fluent in Russian. He knows all the prison commandants and the prisons around Russia. So he was able to get me in to see my father's prison cell in Vladimir in '97. And that was a very surreal experience, to walk into the courtyard, to meet the prison commandant, then to be escorted into my dad's prison cell that had been freshly painted and spruced up for this visit. So I was able to sit on the cot, contemplate for a few moments about what it was like for 18 months to be in that cell room. Just a minute was too long. I'm not sure how my dad endured 18 months of it. Just, the psychological impact of being in an 8-foot by 12-foot cell. I don't know how long I'd last. But that were the 4 trips I took, and the ability to visit the prison cell. So whoever has the mic has the question.
Do we have anybody else here with a question on the other side? Oh, as I pass across, I'm going to do the thing I shouldn't do because I know it's a whole separate program. Can you give us, just because we're in an air museum, the Reader's Digest version of the U-2? Just a little bit of the airplane.
Well, sure. The U-2, built, designed, 1955, in about 8 months with a slide rule, under budget. Think that's going to happen today? All government contracts are over budget. So Kelly Johnson was the designer. He was a genius, an aeronautical engineer that basically took the shell of an F-104 in his mind and was able to get these very long wings that he knew would create a lot of lift. So the U-2 fuselage is approximately 40 foot long, 80 foot wingspan, can fly at an altitude of 70,000 feet and above. It's been operational from 1955 through the present day. The U-2s, or the new versions of the U-2s that were created in the mid-'80s, are still flying today. The headquarters are at Beale Air Force Base in California, right near Sacramento, and they're still deployed around the world for operational missions. Drug smuggling in South America, Middle East countries for the war that's going on, and other atmospheric testing, such as ozone testing on the poles. So they're still a great platform. Lockheed's a great company. They have been very, very good at making planes that have served our country very well.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Very nice. You say that the Soviets accepted their spy as a hero, as the United States did not. I did not get the logic behind it. Can you, in a nutshell, you tell me why this is the case?
Yeah, I think everybody's heard that about why would the Soviets treat their spy as a hero, but yet the U.S. would not treat my father as one. And I attribute this to basically the Cold War mindset. We had just come off the McCarthy era. So the sensationalism that was in the press, talking about this pilot who had been shot down, no one knew what happened. And armchair generals, quote unquote, from the comfort of their living room couch watching the news can speculate, oh, he had to have had a flame out. Because the Russians, they are so far backwards, there's no way they can have a missile that can reach this altitude of 70,000 feet. It had to be the pilot's fault. And so between the press that wrote the misinformation, armchair generals, I mean, literally, some U.S. generals, U.S. politicians were quoted as saying that they had a flame out, that it's the pilot's fault, that he should have killed himself. And so as a result of that controversy, that tarnished Dad's reputation. Now, once the CIA cleared him and the Senate Select Committee hearing cleared him, you would think that that would be it. But because of the press, the negative press that was already out there, there was more negative press for 2 years and 1 day of positive press when he was cleared. So I believe that contributes to why the misinformation continues to circulate today. I believe that's why he was not honored earlier as a hero to our country, because he was controversial. We have one in the front row.
Okay, coming across. Oh, give me just one moment, sir.
They want to get it on.
The folks at home. Why did Steven Spielberg choose this project? Any idea?
I will tell you that in just a second.
Thanks for coming. Do you think the government is still withholding some information on what happened?
Do I think the government's withholding some information on what happened? In regards to the U-2 incident, there are some aspects that are still top secret and that will probably not be released. But for the most part, because of a 1998 declassification conference hosted by the CIA and the Air Force at Fort McNair in Washington, D.C., the U-2 program was declassified from 1954 to 1974. And during that declassification conference, which I attended, it was revealed that it was a military operation. That it wasn't just the CIA, civilian, but it was a military operation. The CIA recruited military pilots. The pilots could go back into the military afterwards. That when they were around the air bases getting ready for missions, it was Air Force personnel that was logistically supporting these missions. So in 1998, it was declassified that it was a military operation. That allowed for the U.S. government to then step up to the plate and honor Dad as a hero to our country. Had it been a military plane, a military pilot flying over a foreign hostile country in 1960, that would have been an act of war. And this is why Eisenhower insisted that the U-2 program be handled by the CIA, a civilian agency, so that it would be an act of espionage and not provocation to World War III. As a result of that conference in '98, let me backtrack. Right before the conference in '98, between '96 and '97, '96 and '98, I was starting to write a letter, or letters, to the Air Force Review Board, trying to find out if my father was eligible for the POW medal. He served almost 2 years in a Soviet prison. So I basically write a letter saying that, and I get a letter back saying, thank you for your inquiry, your father is not eligible. First, he was not military. Civilians are not entitled to the POW medal. And second, the Cold War is not one of those events or time periods where medals are issued. So I keep writing letters, I keep getting a no, no, no in return. Until '98, the declassification conference, military operation. I photocopied the chapter, I sent it in with another letter saying this information has just become available, expecting to get another no reply. And to my surprise, I get a letter from the review board that basically says, hey, Mr. Powers, thank you so much for writing this letter to us and showing us this new information. This is what we are here for, to review new information when it becomes available. As a result, we will be updating your father's service record to show 14 years of service. He will be promoted to rank of captain, which would be his peer group, and he will be eligible for the POW medal, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the Korean Service Medal for anybody who served during that time period. As an added bonus, when the medals were presented on May 1st of 2000, Dad also received the Director's Medal from the CIA for extreme fidelity and courage when on a duty. This all was a result of that declassification conference. And so I believe that probably 85% of the YouTube program has been declassified. Some of the stuff that's not yet been declassified are certain countries we overflew, certain countries that were involved, and certain targets. Other questions? Not offhand? So I think we're good.
Oh, they want my question. I'm sorry, they're insisting. Spielberg, what made him select that project?
Okay, the Spielberg question. Why did Mr. Spielberg do a film on Rudolph Abel and Gary Powers in The Exchange? When I first found out, I didn't think he was going to do this. Why would he do this? He has no reason to do this. But after talking to him on set and asking him that exact question is, why did you select this project? There's a family connection. Turns out that Mr. Spielberg Sr., his dad, was a GE engineer in the 60s, 50s and 60s. And there was some type of a cultural exchange program in '60 where American engineers would go over to the Soviet Union, Moscow. Moscow engineers would come over to America, and it was an exchange program. So Mr. Spielberg Sr. was in Moscow in 1960 after the shoot-down. He is in line to go through Gorky Park to see the U-2 wreckage. He's an engineer. He wants to see the plane. So he's in line with 2 or 3 of his contemporaries, his fellow engineers. The Russian guards at the line see that they're Westerners by their dress. They come up to him, they yank him out of line, they take him up to the front, they berate him and belittle him in the front of the wreckage. Look at you evil Americans, this is how we protect our country. And so this was a lasting impression. So when baby Spielberg is growing up, his dad and him are talking about his experiences in Russia. So Mr. Spielberg, the director, was aware of the U-2 incident and my father and Rudolph Abel, but had never really known about the exchange, never knew about some of the behind-the-scenes things that were taking place that was in the script that the Coen brothers presented to him. So there was a family connection to the U-2 incident, and that's why I believe he selected to do this project. And I think there was a question over here. Oh, same one. So that was that question.
Well, and that kind of finishes us up leading into next season when we want to show that Retro Spies. So thank you once again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you very much. So I appreciate the applause and coming out to hear me today. It's just nice to know that people have an interest in this history. If anybody is interested in the books that I've mentioned or I have up here, please let me know. I've got some for sale today. If you know of any lecture venues that would like to have me out as a speaker, please let me know. I can be reached at garypowers.com. And you can get more information about the Cold War Museum at coldwar.org. If any of you have artifacts in your footlockers, your trunks, you're downsizing, you're retiring, your kids don't want your stuff, please consider the Palm Springs Air Museum, the Cold War Museum, a museum in your hometown. That way your history will be kept alive for future generations, and the museums will have items to work with. So thank you all very much for coming out. I'll be glad to talk to you one-on-one.